Being nice is the most violent act of self-sabotage you can commit. It is a slow, methodical suicide of the soul, a voluntary surrender of power disguised as a virtue. You have been sold a lie, a comfortable fantasy that agreeableness, predictability, and unwavering support are the currencies of desire. And you have spent your life savings on it, only to find yourself emotionally bankrupt, watching from the sidelines as men who operate on a different, more ruthless economy claim every prize you ever wanted. She didn't just put you in the friend zone. That's a polite, sterile term for the truth. She dismantled you. She took your validation, your time, your emotional energy, and your desperate need for approval, and she built a comfortable pedestal for herself, a place from which she could safely look down on you while she scanned the horizon for a man who challenged her, a man who intrigued her, a man who was not a safe harbor but an unpredictable sea. You remember that moment, don't you? The air in the room was thick with the scent of coffee and your own quiet desperation. You leaned forward, rehearsing the perfect, non-threatening joke in your mind. You delivered it with a hopeful smile, a performance begging for applause. What you received was a ghost of a laugh, a flicker of pity in her eyes that seared itself into your memory. It was the laugh of a queen acknowledging a court jester. In that single hollow sound, you heard your own verdict, harmless, predictable, and utterly uncompelling. Later, you offered to help her with a problem, a project, something that would cost you hours of your life. You saw it as an investment in connection. She saw it as a free transaction. Her thank you was casual, dismissive, the same tone one uses for a machine that has performed its function correctly. You were a utility, not a man. A tool to be used, not a force to be reckoned with. You walked away from that interaction feeling a familiar, cold void inside you. The chilling realization that you were more invisible with her than you were when you were alone. You were a ghost in your own life, haunting the periphery of her attention. You followed the rules. You were told to be a gentleman, to be supportive, to be the shoulder to cry on. You became the perfect emotional janitor, cleaning up the messes left by the men she actually desired. You held the door, you paid the compliments, you listened endlessly. You played the game with the honor of a fool, never realizing the game itself was rigged. As the great strategist Robert Greene observed, the more you are seen and heard from, the more common you appear. Your constant availability, your eagerness to please, it didn't make you a hero. It made you common. It made you background noise. It stripped you of all mystery, all tension, all power. Power does not beg for attention. It commands it through its absence. It is the unspoken sentence, the calculated distance, the deliberate ambiguity that creates a vacuum, forcing others to lean in, to invest, to wonder. You, on the other hand, filled every silence with anxious chatter, every space with your desperate presence, leaving no room for her to desire anything from you because you had already given everything away for free. You have been trying to win a war by handing your weapons to the enemy and pointing to the weaknesses in your own armor. If this feeling of being a ghost, of being a predictable pawn in a game designed for your failure, resonates in the very marrow of your bones, then you have found your war room. This is not a place for comfort. It is a training ground for power. Subscribe to Dominio Psicologico right now. Fortify our ranks by liking this video and declare your position on the battlefield. In the comments below, tell us about a time you played the nice guy and paid the ultimate price for it. We want to hear the story. And from what corner of the world are you preparing to reclaim your power? Let us know. The first step to seizing control is to finally admit, with brutal honesty, that you never had it in the first place. This is where you stop being the audience to your own life and start becoming its architect. But be warned, the blueprints for the man you are about to become will require you to burn the very foundation of the man you once were. The question is, are you willing to strike the match? Let's perform a cold deconstruction, an autopsy of your authority. Your power did not vanish in a single catastrophic event. It wasn't a sudden explosion. It was a slow leak, a methodical poisoning, a series of 1,000 quiet concessions that you, in your desperate pursuit of being liked, failed to recognize as acts of war. You thought you were building a bridge. In reality, you were digging your own trench, a trench you would eventually be buried in. This fall, this descent into the predictable, harmless category of a man she uses but never desires, happened in distinct, almost imperceptible phases. Your failure was not in the final, desperate plea for her affection, but in the very first time you chose comfort over respect. The first phase was emotional concession. It began subtly. It always does. It was a minor test, a probe of your defenses. She was late for a date, maybe 15 minutes, maybe 30. The excuse was plausible, but flimsy. The air was charged with a silent question. Is his time valuable? Does he respect himself? Your programming, the nice guy code drilled into your very soul, kicked in. You smiled. You said, "It's no problem at all." And in that moment, the first crack appeared in your fortress. You communicated that your time was negotiable, that her convenience superseded your own standards. The battle was over before you even knew it had begun. She tested. You yielded. She won. Or perhaps she canceled plans at the last minute. A text message, devoid of any real apology. Just a statement of fact. Something came up. Can't make it. Your immediate response, driven by a fear of appearing demanding or losing the opportunity, was to say, "Oh, that's okay. We can do it another time." When are you free? You didn't just accept the disrespect. You actively rewarded it by immediately placing the burden of rescheduling on your own shoulders, signaling that you would eagerly wait, indefinitely, for another scrap of her attention. You taught her that she could breach any contract with you without consequence. Every time you apologized for an opinion she disagreed with, every time you laughed at a joke that wasn't funny, every time you said yes to a request that inconvenienced you, you were making another emotional concession. You were handing over territory piece by piece, in exchange for a fleeting smile of approval. You believed you were being agreeable and easygoing. From a strategic perspective, you were signaling that you had no boundaries, no core, no non-negotiable principles. You became a blank slate for her to write her own terms upon. You were a nation without a constitution, and she became your absolute monarch. From this foundation of concession, the second phase was inevitable, the loss of control. Having established that your boundaries were fluid, she began to dictate the terms of the entire engagement. This is where the frame of the interaction shifted entirely. The frame is the unspoken context, the dominant reality of the relationship. The one who controls the frame controls the dynamic. You lost control of the frame the moment you let her define the pace of communication. You would send a thoughtful message, and she would reply hours, or even a day, later with a one-word answer. Your anxiety spiked. You wondered what you did wrong. You drafted and redrafted your next message, trying to be more witty, more engaging, more perfect. You were playing her game. The correct strategic move would have been to mirror her investment, or, even better, to disengage and focus your energy elsewhere, creating a vacuum that might have forced her to question your availability. Instead, you doubled down, signaling that she was the prize and you were the contestant. You lost control when she started talking about other men. She would tell you about her bad dates, about the jerks who treated her poorly, and you, the emotional janitor, would dutifully listen, offering support and advice. You thought this was building intimacy. You were wrong. You were being placed firmly and irrevocably into the role of the non-threatening, asexual confidant. You became her safe space, which is the psychological equivalent of a neutered pet. A man who commands desire is never a safe space. He is a challenge, an adventure, a degree of exhilarating risk. By willingly absorbing her emotional baggage from other men, you were not only accepting the friend zone, you were furnishing it for her. You lost control of your own social life, turning down invitations with your friends on the off chance she might text and want to do something. Your life began to orbit hers, a dim moon around a bright sun, and she felt this shift in gravity. It wasn't attractive, it was suffocating. Power is about having options, about having a life so compelling that another person feels privileged to be a part of it. You made her your entire life, which paradoxically made you a less valuable addition to hers. This leads directly to the third, and perhaps most pathetic, phase, the relentless search for validation. Once you lost control, your self-worth became inextricably tied to her reactions. Her approval was your oxygen. You began to operate not from a place of authentic action, but from a desperate need for a specific response. You became a performer, and she was the one-person audience you could never seem to please. This is when you started doing things for her, not with her. You offered to help her move, to fix her computer, to proofread her essay. These were not acts of genuine kindness. They were transactions. You were spending your time and energy as currency, hoping to buy a sliver of her affection and desire. But she saw it for what it was, a free service. Her thank you was not filled with budding romantic interest. It was filled with the casual appreciation one has for a functioning appliance. You were a utility. You were useful, and therefore, disposable. This search for validation manifested in your conversations. You started over-complimenting her, showering her with praise for the most mundane things. You're so smart. You're so funny. You're amazing. These compliments, devoid of any real tension or challenge, became white noise. As Robert Greene noted, what is offered in abundance decreases in value. You were a fire hose of validation in a world where scarcity creates desire. A truly powerful compliment is rare, specific, and earned. It hints at a high standard. Your compliments were cheap and needy, betraying your own low-status position. You were communicating, "I need you to like me, so I will tell you everything I think you want to hear." It is the psychological equivalent of a beggar rattling a cup. It inspires pity, never passion. The fourth phase is the darkest: affective dependency. Your search for validation became an addiction. Her attention was the drug. A quick, friendly text from her could make your day. A period of silence could send you into a spiral of anxiety and self-doubt. Your emotional state was no longer your own. It was a marionette, and she held the strings, whether she was aware of it or not. This is the point where you became a ghost in your own life. You were physically present, but your mind was elsewhere, constantly replaying conversations, analyzing her words, trying to decipher the hidden meaning behind a period instead of an exclamation mark. You were no longer the protagonist of your own story. You were a side character in hers. This dependency is a complete abdication of masculine energy, which is fundamentally about internal stability and self-reliance. You outsourced your emotional well-being to someone who had never agreed to take on the job. This is an immense unspoken pressure on her, and it is profoundly unattractive. A woman is drawn to a man who is an emotional rock, not a man who needs her to be his emotional anchor. Your neediness became a palpable, suffocating energy field. She could feel your desperation in your quick replies, in your over-eager suggestions, in the way you would drop everything for her. It repelled her. People are drawn to strength and independence. They are repulsed by weakness and dependency. You were advertising your emotional bankruptcy and wondering why no one wanted to invest in you. No one is coming to save you. You must be your own savior, and you abandoned that post long ago. The final, catastrophic phase is the breaking of silence. This is the moment of total capitulation. After weeks or months of simmering in your own anxiety and unrequited feelings, you commit the ultimate strategic blunder. You decide you need clarity. You initiate the talk. You sit her down, or worse, you pour your heart out in a long, multi-paragraph text message, confessing your feelings, asking "what are we?" and demanding to know where you stand. You think this is an act of courage, of being honest and vulnerable. It is an act of utter strategic suicide. In that single moment, you destroy any lingering mystery, any shred of tension, any possibility of desire you might have had left. You are laying all your cards on the table, revealing a losing hand, and then asking your opponent to please have mercy. Power in seduction, as in warfare, lies in ambiguity, in the unspoken, in what is withheld. Her silence is dominance, not inattention. By forcing a confession, you are begging for a verdict from a judge who has already decided your case. You are giving her all the power to formally reject you, to say the words that will echo in your mind for months. "I see you as a friend." When you asked for forgiveness for feeling the way you did, or apologized for making things awkward, you signed your unconditional surrender. You gave her the gift of a clean, guilt-free exit, while you were left to clean up the emotional wreckage. You broke the silence because you could no longer tolerate the tension. But tension is the very currency of attraction. Without it, there is only the sterile comfort of friendship or the cold finality of indifference. She tested you from the very first minute, and in this final act, you failed spectacularly. Now you might be sitting there listening to this, and your ego is screaming objections. "But I was just being a good person. Is it wrong to be nice?" This is the fundamental lie you have been sold. There is a vast, unbridgeable chasm between being a nice guy and being a good man. A good man acts from a place of internal strength and values. He is kind, yes, but his kindness is a choice, not a strategy for approval. His time is valuable. His respect is earned. He has boundaries of steel, and if they are crossed, there are consequences. A nice guy is not good. He is compliant. He is not kind. He is afraid. His niceness is a covert contract. "I will do all these things for you, and in return, you will give me the affection and validation I crave." It is a weak, manipulative, and ultimately dishonest way of interacting with the world. Another objection. But isn't communication the key to a healthy relationship? Yes, communication between equals. The communication you engaged in was not a dialogue, it was a plea. It was a subordinate reporting to a superior. Communicating from a position of weakness only reinforces your low status. True communication happens when both parties have something the other wants, when there is a balance of power. You gave up your power long before you ever opened your mouth to communicate. This entire process of decay happened in the silence, in the hesitations, in the small choices you made every single day. It happened when you chose not to speak up. It happened when you put her comfort above your own self-respect. It happened in the yes you said when your entire being was screaming no. You were so afraid of conflict, so terrified of her disapproval, that you created a far worse conflict within yourself. You became your own jailer. It is time to face the cold, hard truth of your own strategic failure. If this diagnosis has struck a nerve, if you recognize your own story in this autopsy of power, then your training can finally begin. But first, we must know our allies. Subscribe now to Dominio Psicologico. Fortify our legion by liking this video, and activate all notifications so you are never caught off guard again. Now, for your first strategic declaration. In the comments below, tell us, which of the 5 stages of surrender, emotional concession, loss of control, the search for validation, affective dependency, or the breaking of silence, is the one that resonates with you the most? Where did you first hand over the keys to your own kingdom? Be brutally honest. Admitting the precise location of your failure is the first step in drawing the new map to your victory. Let us be brutally clear. There is no going back for the weak. There is only the construction of the new. The man who apologized for his own existence. The man who sought permission to desire. The man who traded his power for a fleeting smile. That man is dead. You will not mourn him. You will not hold a funeral. You will simply seal his tomb and begin building a monument on top of it. This process is not emotional. It is not about healing your wounds or finding closure. That is the language of the victim. Our language is one of strategy, of architecture, of war. This is a tactical reconstruction of your entire being, and it begins with 3 primary commands. First, cut the excess. Second, install the silence. Third, control the reaction. This is not a hope. It is a plan of operations. Your first command is to cut the excess. This means you will reinstall the principle of absolute scarcity. You will vanish. This is not a dramatic exit announced with a declaration. It is not a passive-aggressive pout. It is a strategic disappearance. You will cease all communication immediately and without warning. You will block her number. You will remove her from every social platform. You will not give her the satisfaction of a final word, an explanation, or an argument. Why? Because any explanation is a plea for understanding. Any final word is a negotiation from a position of weakness. You have already said too much. You have already given everything away. As Robert Greene wrote in The 48 Laws of Power, what withdraws, what becomes scarce, suddenly seems to deserve our respect and honor. Your constant availability made you common, like air. Now, you will become a vacuum. You will create a void where your validation, your attention, and your emotional labor used to be. She will reach for it out of habit and find nothing. At first, this will be a curiosity, then a minor irritation. Finally, it will become a question that gnaws at the edges of her mind. The silence is not for her, it is for you. It is the sterile environment required for your own reconstruction. Every moment you spend wondering what she is thinking is a moment stolen from the mission. Cut the excess, sever the connection, starve her of the attention you once provided for free. This is the first and most critical act of reclaiming your power. You don't reconquer. You replace with a sharper silence. The second command, install the silence. This goes beyond simply not contacting her. It is a fundamental shift in your entire mode of operation. You must master the art of the unspoken. The nice guy you were was terrified of silence. He filled every pause with anxious chatter, desperate jokes, and validation-seeking questions. He believed that communication was about volume. The new man you are becoming understands that power lies in economy of language. In any future interaction, not with her, but with the world, you will learn that not responding is a form of dominance. When you are provoked, you will remain still. When you are asked a foolish question, you will meet it with a quiet gaze that communicates more than any answer ever could. You will learn to let the other person break the tension. Let them rush to fill the void you create. In their anxiety, they will reveal their entire strategy, their weaknesses, their needs. You, in your silence, remain a fortress, impenetrable, mysterious, in control. You will be an absence that carries weight, not a presence that begs. This silence is your new weapon. It is the shield that deflects the emotional probes of others and the sword that cuts through their defenses. People are not drawn to the man who says everything. They are obsessed with the man who hints at a world of depth they cannot access. Your silence signals that you have a life, a mission, a purpose so consuming that you do not have the time or the energy for trivialities. It creates intrigue. It forces respect. It is the ultimate expression of self-control. And in a world of emotional incontinence, self-control is the rarest and most valuable of all currencies. Your third and final command is to control the reaction, which means you must control the source, yourself. While she is noticing your absence, you will be engaged in the most important battle of your life, the relentless and brutal reconstruction of your own value. This is where you wage war on your own weakness. This is where you turn your focus inward with the intensity of a laser. You will channel all the energy you once wasted on her into the 4 pillars of masculine hierarchy: the physical, the financial, the social, and the symbolic. Physically, you will go to war with your body. You will not work out, you will train. You will push yourself past pain in the gym until the man in the mirror is someone you can finally respect. This is not about vanity. It is about discipline. It is about forging a physical presence that communicates strength before you ever speak a word. Financially, you will become obsessed with your mission, your work, your business, your craft. This will become your new religion. You will attack your goals with a ruthless efficiency, understanding that money is not just currency. It is a tool for freedom, for options, for power. A man with resources is a man who cannot be easily controlled. Socially, you will rebuild your network, not for her, but for you. You will cultivate relationships with high-value men, men you can learn from, men who challenge you. You will build a life so compelling, so filled with purpose and adventure, that the idea of orbiting a single woman becomes laughably absurd. And symbolically, you will cultivate your mind. You will read, you will study, you will acquire knowledge that makes you dangerous. You will learn the very psychological frameworks we discuss here until they are second nature. You will become the strategist, not the pawn. This is the path. It is cold. It is solitary. It is brutally difficult. But it is the only path that leads to true, unshakable power. The goal is not to get her back. That is thinking too small. The goal is to build a new man, a man of such undeniable value and presence that she becomes a ghost in your past, a forgotten lesson from a forgotten war. The man who wants to be loved will be discarded. The man who imposes his presence, who builds an empire within himself, will be feared. And fear, when properly wielded, commands a level of respect that love can never touch. The blueprints are now in your hands. The old structure of the compliant, predictable man has been condemned. It is time to begin demolition and lay the new foundation. If you are ready to pick up the tools and begin the work, then solidify your allegiance to this new mission. Subscribe to Dominio Psicologico. Empower this broadcast by liking the video, and activate all notifications to ensure you receive every strategic briefing. Now, you must declare your first move. In the comments below, answer this with cold precision. Of the 4 pillars of reconstruction, the physical, the financial, the social, or the symbolic, which one have you neglected the most? And what is the one, single, ruthless action you will take in the next 24 hours to begin reinforcing it? There are no wrong answers, only weak commitments. Show us your resolve. The thirst for dominance is not quenched by watching. It is quenched by building. Begin. And so, the silence stretches. Days become weeks. Weeks become a season. The void you created is no longer a temporary strategy. It is a new state of being. You have starved the addiction, not by willpower, but by replacing it with a more potent drug: purpose. The gym has become your forge. Every drop of sweat a purification. Your work is no longer a job. It is the construction of an empire, brick by painful brick. Your mind is not a prison replaying old conversations. It is an armory, stocked with the philosophies of strategists and kings. You did not heal. You cauterized the wound and built a fortress over the scar. Then, one day it happens. Not in a dramatic, cinematic confrontation, but in the sterile, fluorescent lighting of a grocery store, or the anonymous bustle of a city street. You see her. For a fraction of a second, the ghost of the old you flickers, a jolt of adrenaline, a memory of anxiety. But it is just that, a ghost. It has no power here. You are the one who is solid. You are the one who is real. She sees you, and her face is a complex map of confusion, curiosity, and a flicker of something she herself cannot name. She approaches, a tentative smile on her lips, the same smile that once held the power to dictate your entire emotional state. Today, it is just data. "Oh my God," she begins, the words slightly too loud, a nervous attempt to fill the space you are so comfortable leaving empty. "I haven't seen you in forever. You just disappeared." It is not an accusation. It is a probe, a test. She is looking for the man she knew, the one who would apologize for his own absence, the one who would rush to explain himself, to validate her experience. That man is not here. You offer a slight, unsmiling nod. Your gaze is direct, calm, and utterly unreadable. You do not help her. You do not ease her social discomfort. You let her dangle in the silence she has created. "How have you been?" she asks, the question now carrying a desperate weight. You answer, but your words are not for her. They are statements of fact from a world she has no access to. "Busy," you say. The word hangs in the air. A steel door slams shut. It is not an invitation for more questions. It is a verdict. She might try again, perhaps with a reference to an old inside joke, a memory you once cherished. She is trying to reactivate the old programming, to find the emotional janitor she kept on call. But you do not react. The memory does not trigger a warm smile. It triggers nothing. You look at her not with anger, not with hatred, but with a cold, clinical detachment, the way a biologist might observe a specimen from a forgotten ecosystem. She is speaking a language you no longer understand because you have burned the dictionary. In this moment, she will finally understand. Not on a conscious level, but in the primal animal part of her brain that recognizes shifts in power. The man who once orbited her is now his own solar system, and she is a distant speck of dust. The validation she once received so freely is now a currency she cannot afford. The game board has not just been flipped. You have melted it down and forged it into a crown. You did not leave the game to spite the player. You left because you outgrew the game itself. The prize you were fighting for, her approval, is now revealed to be a worthless trinket. Your victory was not in winning her over. It was in rendering her opinion completely and utterly irrelevant. This is the ultimate vengeance. It is not a dramatic speech. It is not a display of newfound wealth to make her jealous. It is not sleeping with her friends to cause her pain. That is the theater of the weak. True, absolute vengeance is your own profound and unshakable indifference. It is the quiet hum of your own empire being built while she is still trying to understand why you stopped texting back. It is the chilling realization on her part that she was not the protagonist in your story of heartbreak, but merely the catalyst for your ascent. She was a training weight you lifted until you became strong enough to lift the world. And now, you have simply put the weight down and walked away. Respect is never requested. It is never negotiated. It is the silent, inevitable consequence of power. It is the space people automatically give you. It is the hesitation in their voice when they speak to you. It is the sudden stillness in a room when you enter. You do not seek it. You command it by becoming a force of nature. A man whose internal world is so much more vast and compelling than the external validation anyone else can offer. The man you were is a cautionary tale. The man you have become is a weapon. The choice was never about her. It was about you. It was about choosing the cold, brutal path of self-creation over the warm, comfortable slavery of seeking approval. You have made your choice. Now, you must live it every single day with the discipline of a soldier and the ruthlessness of a king. If you are ready to abandon the battlefield of her approval and begin constructing your own kingdom, then your final orders are clear. Subscribe to Dominio Psicologico and join the ranks of men who choose power over pity. Fortify this transmission by liking the video and activate all notifications, for the war against your own weakness is fought on all fronts, at all times. Now, for your final declaration. We have dissected your past failures and laid the blueprints for your future dominance. So tell us in the comments below, with the cold certainty of a man who has already made his decision. When that inevitable moment comes, and she reaches out to test the fences of your new reality, what will be the one single, definitive action, or inaction, that you will take to communicate, without a single word of explanation, that the game is over forever? The goal was never to make her see you. The goal was to become so solid, she would pass right through you, like a ghost from a life